Good afternoon, everyone. Please. Good afternoon, everyone. We have here Ms. Judith Sargentini. She is the rapporteur for the report on the situation in Hungary that the plenary just approved. She's going to present you with the the main lines of the report, but really briefly, because we will leave then most of the time for you to make questions. I'm giving the floor now to Ms. Sargentini.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. I told you this week, time and time again, this would be a very tight vote. People asked me, are you sure about whether winning? I said, no, absolutely not. This depends on particularly colleagues in the European People's Party. And so I think I should start with thanking Manfred Weber, the leader of the European People's Party, to be very clear last night, saying he would support an Article 7. I think that that's a very responsible move to make, particularly for a Spitzenkandidat, to show that European values, democracy and rule of law is crucial also towards the European elections. I understood that we in the end got quite a nice majority. 69% of the votes present voted in favour. And I feel assured. I think it's a positive sign of this Parliament taking responsibility and wanting action. You might want to know what the next steps are. That is questionable. As you know, that when Commissioner Timmermans started the Article 7 procedure towards Poland in November 2017, there was no timeline for the Council to respond. So again here, I'm at the stage where Commissioner Timmermans was in November 2017. There is no timeline. But at least they got used to how this works. So I expect them to respond quickly. And I also think that, again, in the light of the European elections, this cannot rest. I also take this sign of Chancellor Kurz from Austria, who 2 days ago said that his ÖVP members should indeed vote in favour of the report that I've written. I take that as a positive sign for the Austrian presidency to actually make a move. I would like to be invited. I actually expect to be invited by the Council to present my report, and I expect President Tajani of this Parliament to make that way for me in order for me to present that report at a summit soon. You want me to go into the content, because somehow I think we've been through that over time.
Or shall we go directly to questions? Maybe that's better.
That's okay.
So, well, who wants to make the first question? So please go ahead. Please introduce yourself, your name and the media you work for.
Microphone, please. Okay, I'm Angela Füsi from Pesti Srácok from Hungary, and I'm short question. The Hungarian government wrote an 108-site answer about your report. Have you read it, and what's your opinion about it?
They did one before in June when I presented a report in the Civil Liberties Committee. Then it was only 90 pages long. Now it expanded another 20 pages. I looked through it and my advisors looked through it. And there are no holes in my report. And that's because my report is built upon sources of intergovernmental bodies like the UN, the Council of Europe, the OCSE, ODIHR, court cases here in Strasbourg and in Luxembourg, infringement procedures. There are no factual mistakes in my report, and on top of that, it never says Ms. Sargentini is of the personal opinion that. It always says the European Commission has issued this and this statement and concludes that and that. And I'm happy Because of course it is not nice to be confronted with mistakes, but I'm happy to see I was not confronted with mistakes, and I find it interesting to see how the Hungarian government argues. First, if a court case or an infringement procedure is finalized and closed, they say the topic is off the table. We know it's not, because you might have compensated financially your judges you removed, you might have returned back to a previous version of your law, but on the ground, judges were moved and people that were more friendly to the regime have been put in place. So you can't say it's off the table. And you can't argue that way if you then the other way around argue that when an infringement procedure is not closed, it is therefore not on the table because it's not closed yet. Very poor argumentation.
Thomas Gärtner, Power News from Germany. Two questions, if I may. First, is it right what Mr. Orban says, that nobody of the parliament, you or someone else from the parliament, went to Hungary for on the ground to verify what others have said about Hungary? And the second question, the Hungarian parliamentarians, they question the mode you counted the vote today. Is this something you are sure about, or and where do you take this?
Okay. First of all, I myself visited Hungary in January 2018 for a couple of days. And I also invited the Hungarian government then to meet with me, and I did. Second, I wanted an official delegation of the parliament to go. But that was voted down in the Civil Liberties Committee by the European People's Party, including the Fidesz members. They did not want me to visit, which I found strange. And I'm happy to say that I'm on the mission to Poland next week, because this parliament will not make that mistake again, trying to be delegitimized by not visiting somewhere. So we'll be in Poland next week. On the vote counting, there is the legal services of this House given their vision on the request of the Conference of Presidents. When they asked me my opinion there, I said I don't mind what way we count, as long as it's very clear and sound, and it is. So I'm not worried at all. I find suggestions that it's not simply how do you call that, a very sore loser.
Jeroen Steeg van het Financieel Dagblad. I'm just wondering what should be the role for the Commission now, and are you assured by what Mr. Juncker said today in the State of the Union on Article 7?
I'm sorry, this might sound bad, but I was busy with this report and the vote, so what did Juncker say about Article 7?
Well, he just wasn't really clear what the Commission would do in case of Hungary. So. Okay, but it hasn't been clear for a very long time. And they launched infringement procedures this summer over issues around, for instance, asylum and migration. And I think they started a case at the court in Luxembourg on the NGO tax law, which I appreciate. But the Commission has been shying away all these years of starting an Article 7 procedure. And I think they should have, in 2013, when they invented a new tool, the Article 2 procedure, the rule of law procedure, they should have started using it on Hungary right away. They didn't. They used it only a first time for Poland. I think we would never have ended up with this vote this late, 8 years, 3 elections, after first changes took place in Hungary, if the Commission would have acted in time and not listened to power politics and party politics. But that's all behind us, because there's a very nice majority of this House, including those that have been very reluctant to tell a family member to shape up.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Bahar from Hungarian Echo Television. And I have got only a very simple question. What's your problem with Hungary?
You asked me that before on a very unfriendly way. And see how polite I am that I'm still going to give you an answer? Sir, I like Hungary. I like your wine, I like your culture. I saw a fantastic exhibition at the Amsterdam Jewish Historical Museum filled with paintings from the 19th and 20th century of Jewish Hungarians. It was fantastic. I go to holidays in your country, or I would love to in the future. There is nothing wrong with Hungary, its citizens, its country. You have a government that takes away your rights and actually puts you up to this kind of questions.
Augustinas from InfoTV, Lithuania. How do you feel about Mr. Weber supporting this motion, but at the same time not supporting Mr. Orban's delegates from being removed, so to say, from European People's Party? Do you see no contradiction here?
Is so not of my business what families do with families' members. So I thanked Mr. Weber after the vote personally, because I think it's a great gesture what he did last night, and I leave it up to the Christian Democratic family to decide what their constituency is going to be.
Eva Harka, UNIFPÉT. Several Hungarian universities are indicated as sources in your report. Two of these institutes have denied the cooperation. How these universities could be indicated as sources?
I have an annex, because this is a rather new thing in the European Parliament. You can do a legislative footprint at the end of your report, and I did that, and I'm one of the few that does. But it doesn't ask, or it actually suggests not to use personal names, which I didn't. So I've listed institutions of which I met with scientists and specialists and activists, and also, what is kind of strange, you don't have to put in the names of institutions that are government institutions, as if those are not sources of information or lobbyists, but I did. So I know the names, and these people know the names, and I take this as a particular sign to the oppression that these institutions want to be removed of the annex, because they are afraid to be outed in Hungary as academic institutions with scientists that have a view that might not be the view of the current government. And isn't that an illustration of exactly the problem we're dealing with?
David Carretta, Radio Radicale Italian Radio. About your request to go to a summit, you said that you expect President Tajani to allow you to do that. Do you have...
To help me to get there. It's not about allowing, but to help me to get there.
But since he is quite, I would say, cold on the issue, do you expect that he will help you in real terms, or the fact that his party, Forza Italia, voted against your report, at the end will prevail in his attitude on this issue? Thank you.
Be strange that the President of the European Parliament, that is representing all of us, would not help the rapporteur of a report that got 69% in favor to do what is democratically right because he would listen to party politics. I cannot imagine that happening.
Per Nyholm, Jyllands-Posten in Denmark. You have now finished your report. There may be more work ahead for you in Hungary. But I wonder, are there other EU countries where you think a critical look at what is happening could be of benefit? I'm thinking especially of, for example, Spain, where there has been enormous pressure on a number of newspapers. A country which is deeply corrupt, and where you have, as the only EU member, political prisoners, and where about 10 of them sitting now in Catalonia, having been incarcerated, some of them for up to a year, and nothing is happening. Another about 10 politicians and a couple of artists have fled abroad because they face prison sentences of up to 30 years.
Is that a question?
Do you think that needs to be investigated?
Indeed, we have political prisoners. Actually, a former colleague of mine, Raul Romeva, who used to be very active here, is in prison. And I care for him, and I follow the file. And if you ask me whether there are more countries in the European Union that are in need for a serious investigation, I say yes. Next week I'll be in Poland with the Civil Liberties delegation. At the same time, there is a delegation of the Parliament going to Malta and Slovakia because of the investigations around the murder of journalists that were looking into corruption cases. Next Strasbourg session, I hope to meet you all again, we will be debating Romania. And if I'm correct, this will coincide with the Romanian, and correct me here if I'm wrong, precedent to also hold a speech. So I think the Parliament is not shying away from taking difficult debates. But I'm not going to say that all cases are alike. So here, that's not what I can say, but I can tell you that Greens indeed are very much looking into the situation. I was in Madrid myself this week, and I do hope that the new government of Spain is taking this is sticking to the different sort of an approach.
Niels Heinsgaard from the Danish newspaper Politiken. I'm just curious of your analysis of the impact of this vote. Some are calling it historical, but do you think it will change the things that you criticize in the report?
I'm a historian, so I shy away from calling something that just happened historical. It takes some decades to see whether that is true. I think it is a remarkable vote because we've been waiting for this so long, and it didn't look that we were going to actually get to this point. I don't think that any vote or beautiful speech in this House is going to voluntarily turn the government of Hungary around on that path. I think this puts responsibility where it is at the Council. And they have been hiding behind the Commission is the guardian of the treaty, which was actually the excuse to think, as long as I shut up, nobody bothers me, I don't bother you, and we keep it cozy, we keep it friendly. That cannot continue, because that way our cooperation is deteriorating. And let me be clear for those that are not Hungarian that think this is not my issue. Prime Minister Orbán, the Prime Minister of Poland, they're all on the table in council meetings, making decisions about the budget, about are we saving banks or not, about how are we tackling climate change. And European citizens' funding is going to these countries. I have no problem with that, because that's solidarity. But I have a problem with it if it goes straight into the pockets of family members of the current regime. So that, I think, will not change voluntarily, and it needs action from the Council.
This might be the last question, because we are running out of...
Ferenc Kis from Hungarian ATV. My question is, what do you mean about that Hungarian government don't accept the result of vote in European Parliament?
I think I said I don't think they voluntarily changed their policy around back into an... It's a nice ringtone, though. I think I said that I don't see them voluntarily turning around their policies back into an inclusive democracy with respect for rule of law and equal treatment. I have no reason to think they would because of this vote. Otherwise, they would have responded differently to the various infringements and court cases and urgencies we've did. Again, this vote has never been towards the Hungarian government. This is targeted at the other 27 member states in the Council.
Just a very final question.
Catherine Fiore, EU reporter. In the light of your report and the suggestion that in terms of the budget there should be conditionality attached to structural funds, for example, would you like to see this strengthened in the future budget so that those countries that are under this procedure or where the rule of law is in question, that there is tougher measures to ensure that money is spent correctly, because as you say, it is European public money.
Tougher measures to make sure that money is spent correctly, I like, but I'm not suggesting to take away funding. What the Greens have as a stance here is that we would like this funding that is actually needed for service providing to citizens to be then spent differently, either directly through the Commission or, if possible, through local authorities. But that, I think, would be a more healthy approach, because we want to bring every member state of the European Union along in economic growth and prosperity for their citizens. That is what, and I think we have a misunderstanding here as well with the government of Hungary, but that is what basically government is about, service providing to all its citizens. And I wouldn't want to make that more difficult. I want this to reach citizens.
Well, that was it. Thank you very much for your time and have a very nice afternoon.